Welcome to Sheeran Guitar Tutorials. My name's David, and in today's lesson, I'll be covering what I believe to be the studio recorded version of one of Ed Sheeran's upcoming songs, Sapphire. Now I say it like that because this tutorial covers how Ed Sheeran played the song at the Old Phone pub in Ipswich, Massachusetts. So considering the official studio recorded version of the song has not come out yet, there may be small differences to the true studio recorded version of this song, so just keep that in mind. If you're interested in learning how Ed Sheeran plays this song live, which I'm assuming will use a loop station, be on the lookout for a future tutorial where I cover the live version of this song. Or if you're watching this tutorial a month or so after the song officially releases, there may be a card to the live tutorial somewhere on your screen now. Now then, you'll need your guitar in standard tuning and you won't need a capo. Let's jump on in. So starting now with the chords. The first one is shown up on your screen now, and it's a little hard to tell, but it sounds like Ed is playing a normal C chord with a few minor changes. First, he has his pinky on the 3rd fret of the high E string, and second, it sounds like he's muting the D string with his middle finger. So I'm going to call this a C prime, and it would sound like this. If you prefer to play a normal C chord though, that's perfectly acceptable, and it'll still sound great. Next chord is a D sus4, and it's just a nice and easy slide up the neck of the guitar from the C prime. You'll also notice now that the D string is open, and so this chord would sound like this. Now the interesting thing about this chord is, based on other tools I use to work out these songs, this chord might actually be a D minor or a D minor 7, and I say might because I'm releasing this tutorial before Sapphire officially comes out, so it's hard to know for sure. But based on videos of watching Ed play this song in Ipswich, he's definitely making the D sus4 chord shape, and the D sus4 chord sounds correct with the rest of the chords, so I'm about 99% sure that the chord is actually a D sus4. However, I just wanted to highlight that this chord may in fact be a D minor or a D minor 7 chord, and if it is, these are a couple options that you could use to play those. So D minor 7 would look and sound like this, or you would just have a normal D minor like this. Moving forward in this tutorial though, I'll be using the D sus4 chord shape. You'll also need to play what looks like a D7 sus4 chord, and that's played like this. An A minor 7 is also required. And finally, an F sus2. Next up is strumming, and there's really only one pattern for like 98% of the song, but it does sound like an additional 2 are also required. So first up is the main pattern, and it would sound like this. Only point to note here is that the strums I have bolded, you should try and emphasize those strums to give the song the rhythm you want. So instead of just, the strumming should sound like this. However, it's hard to tell if Ed is playing what I have shown for pattern 1 or what I have shown for pattern 1A. They're really similar. Pattern 1A just takes out 2 up strums and is maybe a little bit easier. Honestly, either sound great, so use what you want. For the remainder of this tutorial though, I have pattern 1 shown, but feel free to substitute pattern 1A wherever you see pattern 1. But just to show you how pattern 1A would sound, it would sound like this. So moving on to pattern 2 now, it's a little bit easier and it would sound like this. Pattern 3 is pretty easy too, and it would sound like this. So it's essentially 7 down strums and then a down up strum. So jumping into the song now, starting with verse number 1. This one is pretty easy. It's just the C prime chord I mentioned before, or a normal C chord if you prefer that. And you're playing it using strumming pattern 1 8 times in total. You'll notice I have the strumming pattern underlined though. That's to tell you that you should try and palm mute this strumming to make it more quiet. So palm muting is done by kind of laying the fleshy bit of your strumming hand near the bridge of the guitar while strumming, and it kind of gives a muffled sort of sound. So it's not fully muted or fully ringing out. It's a muffled sound. So now I'll just play the entirety of verse number 1, and it would sound like this. Next up is pre-chorus 1, and it's just 2 lines of chords. The first section of line 1, you're using strumming pattern 1 to play the C prime and D sus4 chords. And you'll notice I have the chords and strumming highlighted in different colors to show which chords go to each part of the strumming. And again, if you prefer to use strumming pattern 1A, I have that shown at the bottom of my notes on the screen as well. So the C prime portion of section 1 would sound like this. And then the D sus4 portion would sound like this. And so all together, section 1 of line 1 would sound like this. You would then repeat the same strumming and chord transitions for the next section of line 1, but now you're playing the A minor 7 and the F sus2. So section 2 of line 1 would sound like this. So all of line 1 would sound like this. The first section of line 2 is just a repeat of the first section of line 1. And then finally, the second section of line 2 is using strumming pattern 1 to play just the F sus2, which would just sound like this. So all of line 2 would sound like this. And the entirety of pre-chorus 1 would sound like this. Next is chorus 1, and there actually isn't anything new here we haven't already learned. It's made up of 6 lines of chords, with the first 4 just using strumming pattern 1 to play the C prime chord. So that would sound like this. The last 2 lines are just the same C prime, D sus4, A minor 7, F sus2 chord progression we learned back in pre-chorus 1, so refer back to that section for those details, but just to play it one time through, it would sound like this. And the entirety of chorus 1 would sound like this. Next is verse 2, and it's similar to verse 1, but with some small differences. So you start by using strumming pattern 1 to play the C prime chord 7 times, but you're actually completely muting the strumming pattern after the first down-up strums. I have that noted by underlining the parts of the strumming pattern that should be muted. And so this is different from verse 1, where you were palm muting your strumming by laying your hand lightly near the bridge of the guitar, so you could hear a muffled version of the chord. Now you're completely muting the strings of the C prime chord, except for when you're doing that first down and first up strum. So the strumming should sound like this. So it's a little tricky to get this down, especially with how fast the song is. but you can achieve that muted strumming while generally keeping a C prime chord shape with your fretting hand by using your thumb to mute the low E string, your ring finger to mute the A string, your middle finger to mute the D string, your pinky to mute the high E, and then you kind of rest your index finger on both the G and the B strings to mute them. All that together lets you keep your fretting hand in generally a C prime chord shape while still muting all the strings, so you can quickly switch back and forth from playing and muting. Just like that. So to play the C prime section of verse number 2, it would sound like this. Then finally, the 8th time through verse number 2, you're starting with the C prime chord again, and now it's unmuted, so that strumming would sound like this. And then halfway through that strumming pattern number 1, you switch to the D7 sus4 chord and play that unmuted as well. So that second part of verse 2 would sound like this. And the entirety of verse 2 would sound like this. Next is pre-chorus 2, and it's exactly the same as pre-chorus 1, so refer back to that section for the details. Next is chorus 2, and it's almost identical to chorus 1, so refer back to that section for most of the details. But to go over the differences I see for chorus 2, it happens during the 4th time through playing your C prime chord. You can see it on my notes on the screen, but Ed will end the strumming pattern a little early before continuing playing. So that 4th time through the C prime chord would sound like this. It's completely optional to do this pause. If you want to ignore it, that's fine. Just play the C prime chord using strumming pattern 1 for the 4th time and then continue on with the chorus. I just thought I'd point it out for those interested. So just to play the first line of chorus 2, it would sound like this. And then I've already gone over the details to play the last 2 lines of chorus 2, so refer back to the pre-chorus 1 section of this tutorial for those details. And so the entirety of chorus 2 would sound like this. Next up is the bridge, and I have it broken down into 2 parts to make things look a little nicer on the screen. So starting with part 1, it's 2 lines of chords, and you play an A minor 7 chord using strumming pattern 1, 1 time through. Then you do the same for an F sus 2. Next, you have a C prime D sus 4 portion, and this is where strumming pattern 2 would come in. However, you could keep using strumming pattern 1 here and making the chord transition at the same point we've been doing it for the whole song. That's up to you. I will say though, it does sound like a different strumming pattern based on what I've seen and heard online. So, assuming you're using strumming pattern 2 here, it would sound like this for the C prime chord. And then the same thing for the D sus 4. So that whole part would sound like this. And then you finish part 1 of the bridge by playing the F sus2 using strumming pattern 1 again. So the entirety of the first part of the bridge would sound like this. Next is the second part of the bridge, and it's pretty much the same thing as the first half, except you're ending it using strumming pattern 3 for the F sus2. Although, to reiterate, you could just use strumming pattern 1 here if you want, although the song does sound like it's using a different strumming pattern. So strumming pattern 3 on the F sus2 would sound like this. So all of part 2 of the bridge would sound like this. Next up is chorus 3, and it's made up of 2 lines of chords. The first section of line 1 is played 3 times and brings back muted strumming using strumming pattern 1 for the C prime chord. However, like verse 2, the first down up is unmuted. So you'll have to apply some of that muting that we went over in the verse 2 section of this tutorial, so refer back to that section on tips for doing this muting. So the first section of line 1 of chorus 3 would sound like this. The second section of line 2 is still on the C prime chord, and you could keep using strumming pattern 1 here, but the song sounds like you're pausing the strumming pattern after the first down strum, and then you're picking it back up for the down, down, up portion at the very end. So the second section of line 2 would sound like this. So the first line of chorus 3 would sound like this. Moving on now to line 2 of chorus 3, we're back to the classic C prime, D sus4, A minor 7, and F sus2 chord progression, where you're using strumming pattern 1 and transitioning between chords at the same places we have been all video. So refer back to the pre-chorus 1 section for the details on that. This second line is played through 4 times though, so chorus 3 is a little longer than the other 2 choruses. So just to play the entirety of chorus 3, it would sound like this. So on now to the last part of the song, pre-chorus 3. And this again has 2 lines of chords. The first line is again our classic C prime, D sus4, A minor 7, F sus2 chord progression, played through 4 times now. So refer back to the pre-chorus 1 section for the details there. But just to play it once, it would sound like this. On to line 2. And the first section is muted strumming using strumming pattern 1 3 times with your fretting hand in an F sus2 chord shape. Now, you can use a similar technique that we did for the C prime chord, where you keep your fretting hand in more or less the same position as an F sus2 chord, but you're able to mute the sound. So you can do that by using your middle finger to mute the low E and the A strings, your ring finger to mute the D string, your pinky to mute the high E, and then your index finger to mute the G and the B strings. That allows you to mute all the strings, but also quickly change to play out the sound of the F sus2, just like this. So the first section of line 2 would sound like this. And And so what I mentioned before about quickly being able to go from muting the F sus2 to playing it is important, because you then move to section 2 of line 2, where you continue to play the F sus2, but you're letting the sound ring out now. And here, you're kind of playing half of strumming pattern 1 to finish the whole song. So the entirety of line 2 would sound like this. And the entirety of pre-chorus 3 would sound like this. And so that's the entirety of the song. So what I'll do now is do a full playthrough of the song so you have something to practice and play along to. Enjoy. And so that's the entirety of the lesson. If you've made it this far, I can't thank you enough. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on all those notifications, and leave a comment below letting me know what you thought. Also, be sure to let me know if you have any requests for future tutorials. If you're looking for other tutorials from Ed Sheeran's album Play, I have ones out right now for Old Phone and Azizam, so be sure to click the card on the screen to jump to both of those. Finally, be on the lookout for many more Play tutorials to come in the very near future. Thank you.